All right, it is 7:02. We will call our Tuesday, March 21st city council meeting to order. Let's start with roll call.
Councilman Becker,
Here.
Councilman Hartwick, here. Councilman Johnson,
Here.
Councilman Schultz,
Here.
President Scheer.
Here. Agenda item 3 is a public hearing on the discontinuance and vacation of North 4th Street between Armenia Street and McMillan Street. And based on the size of our crowd in attendance this evening, I am going to ask that all comments be germane to the vacation of North 4th Street and remain within a 3-minute window. So we do have 2 people signed up for public hearing in person. So when your name is called, if you would come up to our podium, state your name, state your address, and then the reason that you are speaking. So we'll start with Jeff Newbold.
Hi, folks. My name is Jeff Newbold. I live at 411 McMillan Street. I'm going to make this really short and sweet. In your consideration of the vacation of 4th Street, I would challenge any of you that believes that this is going to be a benefit to the hospital to trade houses with me and come and ride that benefit. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. You'll have to forgive me as I'm trying to read the signature. Elliot Larson, you'll be the next one.
Hi, my name's Elliot Larson, 415 McMillan Street. I have lived 40 plus years at this residence. My wife Debbie and myself are grateful that Fort Atkinson has a hospital for our city. I personally just don't understand the reasoning that the hospital has to propose to block off 4th Street between McMillan Street and Armenia. The hospital has or had options to consider for parking rather than discontinuing that. So my concern is the traffic flow, especially for the people that are on McMillan Street and Armenia that are off of East Sherman. If you block that off, there's going to be a lot going on there. And right now, the street of McMillan Street needs repair. And so I don't know. I think the people in the community don't know how the plan is going to be exactly, because that street needs to be fixed before you would shut this down. And so I'm worried about that because people are having trouble getting out of their driveways if you're going to have more traffic on those 2 aspects, if you're going to shut that off. And so I'm concerned about that. Put yourself in the shoes of some of these residents pertaining to Armenia and McMillan and some other areas. We the people want you to look at this situation and help us. There are 22 people that have objected this, and they all live on 4th Street or abutting to 4th Street. And there's more that now you've read the emails, I presume, and so I'm not going to repeat those. So I hope that you consider that. Please consider the impact vacating 4th Street this would have on all the residents and the whole area of the city. This could be a precedence of something else too. So I hope you consider that, and thank you very much.
Thank you. This will be a first call for any other public comment on the public hearing of the vacation of North 4th Street, and that is for either virtual or in person. This is a second call for public hearing.
Give me a second here so I can see. Well, my name is Jim Nelson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Finance and Strategic Development for Fort Healthcare. I live at 418 Hickory Street. First of all, I want to thank you for letting me address the council on the closure of the petition to close 4th Street. Fort Healthcare has been ranked a top 100 hospital, rural hospital in the nation, plus we're a top 100 workplace. We've been that for several years. They're not recognitions that we've ever sought out. They've just happened because of what we do and how we do it. A big reason why we do so well is we plan for our future and we get the support from our community to make it happen. The petition to close 4th Street is a result of our discussions with the city of Fort Atkinson to help us correct our current challenges of parking as well as anticipated projects that we have in the future. When we did our 2004 edition, we maxed out the parcel of land on which the hospital currently sits. When we maxed that site out, we already started planning for what that future might be and how it might occur. Then City Manager John Wilmette was working on the city's first comprehensive plan. And we worked with him and we all agreed that focused growth towards the north would be the most prudent and the least disruptive for the hospital to continue to grow in that current site. That's why you see the block immediately north of the hospital campus identified as the growth area for medical services in the current comprehensive plan. Fort Healthcare began purchasing houses to the north right at that same time, knowing that someday we need to be ready for our next expansion. Last year, we communicated to the city of our readiness of the next step. And granting the closure of 4th Street will allow us to convert 4th Street in the area where those 4 houses currently sit to the north of our campus into a parking and accommodate our current and anticipated needs. The anticipated needs involve moving some clinical operations back to the hospital campus where we can be more efficient and also fiscally responsible. In addition, Fort Healthcare is working to develop the area where the current remote parking lot sits, that 7+ acre lot, into some needed housing for our community. The 4 houses will get relocated if we get 4th Street vacated, just a couple hundred feet to the northeast where they currently sit. We're working with the city to obtain rezoning in that area so we can put a street parallel to Florence Street to accommodate the 4 houses and also create an additional lot for a new duplex in that area. We anticipate the new street to be the first effort in developing that remaining 4 areas for some additional housing. That happens to be the area, not coincidental, but the area where the new TID district is that the city created on January 1st of this year. So the new planned parking lot and the area where the houses get moved and the area developed to the north of our campus will all be coming back to the city and the Planning Commission over the next couple of months. So we'll continue to work. We thank you for your support and help. And I think part of the reason why we are a top 100 workplace is the support we get from our community that makes us stronger and better. So I just want to thank you for all your support and your help.
Thank you, Jim. This will we'll have you approach the lectern, state your name, your address.
Hi, Jody Raddatz, 1245 Jeanette Street. My question is, when the gentleman before said, oh, I think you've gotten the emails, I didn't see anybody react. So have you gotten emails from people? Because like I'm trying to learn about city government and how you guys work, and I don't see any discussion really. It's like it's brought up so I'm like, the homeowners are very concerned about this. And if he's lived there 40 years of winters, holy cow, that says a lot. While I agree that the hospital's great to have and stuff, I just can't see.
So we do receive emails. Not only do we receive emails from individual constituents and have individual conversations with our constituents, but anything that is officially received and documented by the city is passed along to us as well. So when there is reference to have you seen emails, we have all seen the emails
And then are
I'll-
they like?
I'll
are they
also note
written-
they were all in the packet. They were all in the city council packet that's available on the website.
Okay, because I did see that they have a packet, but I didn't
Yep.
go into that. I went into the other thing.
Yep,
So,
those were all the support and opposition emails and petitions that came in are all included in that packet. And this
Okay.
is the public hearing portion.
right.
So there's
Okay.
not going to be discussion amongst the city council. There's an action item later on the agenda where there may be.
The
Okay.
only thing I will just mention too is any individuals who did email us directly. I know I personally responded to those individuals. We are not allowed to respond to the group to discuss because that actually is against the law. It
Right.
violates open
Okay.
meeting laws. And all the other sheets in the packet, all of that information has been made available to us.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Problem. This will be a second call for public hearing. This will be a third and final call for the public hearing relating to the vacation of North Fourth Street. Seeing none, hearing none, we will move right along to agenda item number 4, which is public comment. Same rules will apply as we had during the public hearing. Please approach the lectern and state your name, address, and contact information. And just remember that no action will be taken on public comments unless the item is also elsewhere on our agenda. This is a first call for public comment. This is a second call for public comment. This is a third and final call for public comment. Seeing none, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is our consent agenda. The consent agenda that is outlined below is presented for action by the city council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any one council member. Items not removed may be adopted by one action without debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the council president.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 6 is petitions, requests, and communications. 6A is the presentation of the Police Department Life-Saving Awards to Officer Amelia Adsit, Officer Brett Dunkelberger, and telecommunicator Hannah Clevin.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting us do this at City Council again. It means a lot to us to do it publicly to recognize the great employees we have for the city. Earlier this year on December, or actually last year, on December 5th, 2022, our agency received a 911 call from a citizen who was calling in about her husband who had fallen, and it was determined that he was not breathing. The call was answered by telecommunicator or dispatcher Hannah Clevin, who was working that shift. She took the call and immediately paged out an ambulance to start responding to the scene. During that time, Hannah then returned back to the caller and started doing what we would call telecommunicator CPR or TCPR, leading the caller through CPR on the person that was before them. She was able to do that without hesitation while handling multiple other things that are going on in the dispatch center, from communicating with the ambulance responding to the scene, with 2 officers also responding to the scene, and also Fort Fire Rescue. So imagine communicating with all of those different responders, talking with someone in distress on the phone. Oh, and also did I mention the phone was ringing because other people needed the police assistance as well at the same time. So a lot going on all at once. Hannah was able to manage all of this seamlessly and express no stress whatsoever in her voice or her actions. She immediately began to guide the caller through CPR while officers and ambulances responded, and was able to do 2 cycles of CPR before the first officer arrived on scene. Insert Officer Dunkelberger. Officer Dunkelberger, first officer on the scene, immediately entered the home and saw the male laying on his back in the living room. The male's face was purple, and Officer Dunkelberger checked for a pulse and could not find one. He immediately started chest compressions, and while doing this, insert Officer Adsit, who then arrives on scene with an AED. While Officer Dunkelberger is doing CPR, Officer Adsit is setting up the AED, placing it on the victim, and they never lose a beat. between the two of them working as a team. A shock was administered to the person, and chest compressions were continued by Officer Dunkelberger. During the second set of chest compressions, Officer Dunkelberger believed the color in the male's face was starting to come back. He was also able to find a pulse then after that shock was delivered. A few moments after that, the AED started to analyze and started acknowledging that there was a pulse, and then the ambulance and Fort Fire Rescue arrived on scene and took over. So a really great example of really good teamwork between two officers and a dispatcher that really made a positive impact. I lost my spot here. It's nice to know that the person that the officers helped made a full recovery and is doing well today. One of the things when we elect or when we come up with these awards is that they're nominated by members of the agency. It's not just me that decides I want to give somebody an award. These awards are written, approved, and awarded by the agency and all the members of the agency. So you know that they are worthy of it. Captain Chad Lang, retired, is the one who wrote up this recommendation for the awards to our committee. And I want to read something that he wrote. He said, "Seeing Dispatcher Clevin take this call was absolutely amazing. With multiple things going on, sending out pages, answering radio traffic, phones ringing, etc. She was able to remain calm and provide life-saving CPR instructions to the caller. I feel her actions, along with the actions taken by Officer Dunkelberger and Officer Atzett on scene, played a huge role in the patient making it through this medical incident." So without further ado, I'd like to invite Officer Atzett, Officer Dunkelberger, and telecommunicator Anna Clevin up to receive awards. So first, Amelia Atzett. This is our life-saving award. It's one of the top awards our agency gives out. It's for the prompt and unselfish act of rendering aid and assistance to another human being, resulting in saving of a life. So here is your certificate, your medal. I'd like to bring up Officer Dunkelberger. Here's your certificate for the prompt and unselfish act of rendering aid and assistance to another human being, resulting in saving of a life. This is Officer Brett Dunkelberger's second life-saving award. So his pin actually has 2 stars on it. It is just like the one here, but 2 stars on it. So we'll replace this one as it's the second person we saved since getting on board with our agency. So congratulations. And Dispatcher Club. Hers looks a little bit different. This is our telecommunicator award. It's a top award given out to our dispatchers. And it is awarded to law enforcement dispatcher whose actions assisted in the saving of a life. So thank you very much. If we could have you come out, we'd like to take that.
Yeah, don't break it. I know. Yeah. There we go. Can you tell we do a lot of photo ops here?
I don't.
Thank you very much for letting us do this during the city council meeting.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. I think that shows how fortunate we are as a community to have these people serving in our emergency response positions. So thank you again, everyone who's still getting photos. All right, we will move on to item 6B, which is an annual item. It is the review and possible action relating to the proclamation recognizing Fort Atkinson as the intersectional P&E city of Wisconsin.
Yes, hello, good evening. This is again our annual request, as Chris mentioned, to request from the state that the city of Fort Atkinson be named the intersectional P&E city of Wisconsin. The museum does this action every year because of the generosity of the Andersons towards the museum. We have in our public gardens, which are the reported largest public collection of Anderson intersectional peonies in the world, more than 60 of their plants. And they're extremely unique, and I won't get into the science because I don't really understand all of it. It's magic. But they are extremely unique and rare, and we are glad to be able to recognize something that is unique in Fort Atkinson, and then to remember and to recognize again the work of the Andersons in helping promote our city.
I won't read the whole proclamation, but I will read one section of it that just highlights how unique this is and how lucky we are to call Fort Atkinson home to this proclamation. Whereas the city of Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin is the home of Roger F. Anderson's famous Bartzella intersectional peony, which after 15 years of diligent work first bloomed in 1986 and is considered by peony experts to be the most perfect yellow peony in the world, and which received the highest American Peony Society Gold Medal Award and the Royal Horticultural Society Award of Garden Merit in 2012. It's pretty amazing for us to be able to say that that is right here in Fort Atkinson. So,
And we have several examples of Bartzella in the museum's grounds as well. They're the pretty yellow ones they're the ones I recognize.
and anticipating when they'll be up and
We
ready to
say
be.
late May, early June. It really depends on Mother Nature. Sometimes it's more like mid-May, but usually late May, early June is when we can say that they are at their peak bloom. This is why we usually request for the first weekend in June to be recognized as the intersectional P&E city of Wisconsin, because at that point we know at least something's in bloom, unless we've had a horrible spring.
I move to approve the proclamation recognizing Fort Atkinson as the intersectional P&E city of Wisconsin.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Takes us to agenda item 7, resolutions and ordinances. 7A is the review and possible action relating to a resolution discontinuing a portion of North 4th Street between Armenia Street and McMillan Street in the city of Fort Atkinson, Jefferson County, Wisconsin.
Thank you. The 4th Street discontinuance is before us this evening. It has been through a fairly involved public process that is set out in state statute. And just a quick review of that. There were two actually information sessions held by Fort Healthcare early on, and then on January 28th, it came before this body as a draft resolution indicating that we were going to consider this within the public forum. It came before the Plan Commission on February the 28th, who had a fairly involved discussion along with a similar forum for public input as well at the beginning of the meeting. It did pass the Planning Commission meeting on the 28th. And we've had, I think, 3 different notices in the paper to conform with the statute to list a class 3 notice on the discontinuance. So before us this evening then is the resolution to consider the discontinuance. As I've said a number of times in these meetings, the coexistence of a hospital in a town of our size and a great neighborhood that we have really demands compromise. And I'm sure this isn't the first time that we've had these types of discussions within the city council chambers. The review by staff related to this was put before you in the memo. There were a number of items that were brought up by the public through the various forums for public comment, through emails to city staff. I'll just touch on a couple of those here that I think were kind of the common ones. The first was traffic. We did look at traffic. I did reach out to both the Fort Atkinson Police Department and the Fire Department to look at it from their perspective. They had no concerns. I think Chief Bump really put it best, that it would be a change, but it would be a change that we would eventually get used to in terms of losing that section of 4th Street. From the engineering side of things, there are two types of traffic that we look at. There's transient traffic, or traffic that's just simply passing through. And then there's local traffic. I think the impact to the transient traffic certainly will be significant. 4th Street does not have any stop signs along that stretch once you turn onto it from Sherman Avenue or from High Street. So it is kind of a nice cut through if you're the efficiency type. So that will obviously go away if the vacation is approved. The other traffic is local traffic. So folks that live in and around the area that are used to taking this for various activities, to go to work, to go to the park, whatever it may be. And obviously you can't travel on a street through that area if it is discontinued. So certainly there will be some local impacts as well. None of these rise to the level of concern from city staff with respect to the ability of the corridor to handle the transportation and the rerouting of traffic. I don't have any safety concerns at the moment, but we obviously would keep track of this should it pass, and we are very much adept at managing these situations if they come up. So if we need to put in stop signs, yield signs, various things like that for traffic calming, we can do that fairly efficiently. The other was stormwater concerns, light concerns, and screening concerns. As well as property values. I can't speak to the property values. We don't really have a good way of really answering that question other than to acknowledge that the question came out. The other three will be dealt with specifically within the Plan Commission. The site plan review for any parking area, whether it includes the vacation of 4th Street or does not, will come back before the Planning Commission, and we will look at those elements in detail through that body. So I feel very confident that we can put together a parking lot that will be as aesthetically pleasing within the neighborhood and also as accommodating as it could possibly be. So the statute itself that governs all of this does have a provision in it that indicates that 1/3 of the property owners who are abutting, meaning actually have frontage on North 4th Street, if they file a formal written objection, if 1/3 of those abutting property owners file a formal written objection, that the vacation would pass city council by a supermajority, in this case 4 of 5 council members voting for. That would require 21 objections. City staff have received 19 objections to date. I will note that there was a comment earlier about 22 objections. The statute does require that the property owner submits that objection, and we had several that were from renters in that area. We did reach out to those individuals and try to indicate to them that that statute required the owner. I think one of those we were able to get in touch with. So we did try to reach out. Again, with the staff review, I think the recommendation from staff really settles on one thing, and that is the comprehensive plan. So we have gone through a fairly involved effort within the city at looking at what we want to be in the future, and that is called the comprehensive plan. We look at that as city staff to guide most of the decisions that we supply to you in the form of recommendations. So city staff recommend approval of the street vacation on North 4th Street because it is in keeping with the comprehensive plan. I will note that this isn't a situation of Fort Healthcare is a major part of our community. And this isn't a situation of they say jump, we say how high. This is a situation where planning has gone into this many years in advance, and the comprehensive plan has encompassed that planning. If you search the comprehensive plan, there are a number of references in there to Fort Healthcare, not just simply in maps and things of that nature. So I really do feel that from the city staff's perspective, the comprehensive plan has served us well in this capacity. But certainly city council is the independent body and would have the would have the last say or the discussion. So I'd be happy to answer any questions associated with this request.
Andy,
at this
can
time.
you, I know I have bombarded you guys with questions over the last couple of weeks, specifically over the last couple of days, just to make sure that I certainly had the clarifications and information that I needed. One of the things that I think would just be nice if you can maybe speak to is, I think there's been some concern that, you know, this was Ford Healthcare's #1 priority, so it was the only thing that was pursued, and that's what's being asked for. Can you just speak a little bit to kind of what some other options were that were looked at and why ultimately it was determined that those options weren't going to address the parking problem that Ford Healthcare is looking at?
Yeah, I think, and this is somewhat secondhand from Mr. Nelson, but I think the big thing that we heard from Ford Healthcare was the remote aspect of parking was a major concern. So not only in employee retention, but in employee safety and just simply logistics, that having the ability to put employees and patrons of the hospital on hospital grounds was a major goal of theirs. I think that is a short-term goal. I think the longer-term goal of Ford Healthcare is to look at expansion. And so we may see that in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not talking about parking expansion, but facility expansion. And so when you think of it in that light, when you look at other alternatives, such as going to there was a lot, and I forget the address, but a lot between the current remote lot and the hospital campus, the lack of contiguity of that just doesn't make sense for the long-term goals. Certainly would maybe accommodate one less street to cross. But with the goal of trying to get everybody on a single campus, it just didn't work. The other options that were looked at, we've exhausted all of the on-street parking options, and that has been within the community or that neighborhood there, something that I think over the years has been discussed quite a bit. And so we really didn't have a whole lot of alternatives to look at under that.
I will just add one thing. When we initially started these discussions, there folks from the hospital indicated that they were purchasing other properties around to the east and to the west of the campus, and suggested, you know, possibly putting in several small parking lots, and that was a non-starter. That was inconsistent with our comprehensive plan, and it doesn't make sense when you look at screening requirements and intrusiveness to the neighborhood. So we really did work with the hospital to focus their efforts to go north, which is what is included in our comprehensive plan, and I believe has been included in the last 2 iterations of that document.
I'm going to sneak in one more here and then I'll share the space. I just want to address, Mr. Larson had brought up a concern about road repairs needed on McMillan. Can you just talk a little bit if you know of anything that's planned for that road at the time, or more so, you know, if this would pass, kind of what does that timing look like of when that section of 4th Street would be closed?
Sure. So the Optimist, we did fix a good chunk of McMillan. So it wasn't the area that Mr. Larson's home is in front of, because I'm well aware of the terrible nature of that. We are waiting for water main. So we do have McMillan Street to the east of the hospital. It is on our list. I think it's within the next 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, for water main replacement. And that's the time when we'll fix the road above. So we fixed McMillan to the north of roughly Florence Street last year or the year before, if I'm not mistaken. The water main under there is in relatively good shape, but the water main to the south of that is going to have to be replaced before we'll put money into the road above. So it is on the list, but I don't have any immediate answers, I guess, for that improvement.
And then what would be the timing of 4th Street? What was it? If
Oh,
this
the
would get
vacation?
passed, what would the?
Yeah, so the process, I think the process would be, we would move through a CSM, much like we'll see here shortly, that would really define the area of 4th Street to be vacated. We would also include in that CSM the easements, because we do have utilities in that area. I have no concerns about being able to service those utilities with the easement in place. So I would imagine within a couple of months, perhaps, we would have the formal document vacating. I know the hospital has indicated if the vacation occurs that they hope to be parking in an expanded lot by Thanksgiving. So that's the long-term construction timeline.
Thanks, Andy.
Do we have an opinion or a feeling on the congestion of the existing parking? Is it congested, not congested? We need to add parking?
We did require them to do a parking study at the very beginning of these discussions, I think perhaps a year ago. That parking study did indicate that with all of the future plans, remember their plan is to bring many of these outlying facilities under one roof, that with that consolidation, that the parking needs were going to go up significantly. It did indicate that the amount of parking on the site would be adequate, but there is no additional area, I guess, or no buffer in that. It looked pretty tight.
I know I read the letters that I saw and they made references to other options. And I drove around the hospital till I was blue in the face. I couldn't see another option versus taking just a different set of houses to make a parking lot.
Yeah.
Which would only shift the problem from one group to a different group of citizens.
Yeah, and Manager Lemire pointed out that, you know, the homes that have been purchased, I think directing this into a single area to the north is critical, so that we don't end up with little parking lots, small parking lots throughout the established neighborhood.
I would also add that that parking study is in the council packet.
That parking study was a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm still trying to pick through it, right? But if I could, I'm still trying to understand, like, if we don't vacate Fourth, you're still gonna probably pave where the houses are north of North 4th Street. I don't have a good understanding of, is that going to be 100% capacity? Will that allow for the growth? That's not clear to me, and I apologize if I haven't had the time to not ask that question before today. But
No, not at all. So the way that I've looked at this is, and I didn't understand it in the beginning either, until conversations with Ford Healthcare. The long-term plan for Ford Healthcare, in terms of expansion of facilities in the future, rests on the vacation of 4th Street. So if they're unable to vacate 4th Street now to gain additional parking, how then will they be able to expand 10 years from now? And with that, you know, and we don't have a crystal ball by any means, but that certainly helped me understand Fort Healthcare's situation, and saying now is the time, you know, to sort of follow through on the planning that's been done and ask for the vacation of 4th Street. We need the parking within the short term, but I think the long-term option of being able to expand to the north beyond parking, you know, facilities or things like that, is really a part of this discussion.
and I guess there's been comments made in the letters that were sent to us, as well stated earlier, that there's not a lot of stop signs or yield signs along North 4th Street. And people may use that as, you know, speedy way. I don't know how they could speed through that with the potholes on that road.
It's always the potholes.
I guess my viewing those comments, like a parking lot isn't an answer. Like other answers could be stop signs and yield signs, right? So
Absolutely.
it's hard for me to view that as a solution to the traffic. But another question leading onto the traffic would be, I don't know if there's a great way to understand how traffic would change. Would there be more traffic along, and bear with me.
Yeah.
McMillan and
Armenia.
Armenia. Is there an estimation of how that traffic pattern would change?
I don't think the patterns will change. I think as they bring additional clinics under that roof, certainly the volume will change. There is almost no concern from my part of the world as the city engineer and director of public works about the ability of our current road network in that area to accommodate traffic. We're, you know, if we need to get to a level 10 before we start to have a conversation here about, geez, what are we going to do about all these cars? We're at a level 2 or 3, just to kind of put it in some perspective. So you're right in saying that it is difficult to understand how all of the patterns will play out. But how they play out, I think, is less of a concern for me because of the established network that we have in place there. And we will see some things that we didn't anticipate. We've done that before. It's kind of the situation where as soon as we pave a street, the neighbors call within a month and say traffic is speeding down the street because there's no potholes, right? So we will have situations that we'll need to attend to. We're well aware of that and have the experience with that. And I think we'll be able to manage that as they arise.
And then another question. Let's just say that this does not pass today. What would stop it? What would stop would that even prevent the hospital in the future from petitioning for this again down the road?
I don't think so. No. There's no statute or anything like that, that once you try and fail, you can't come back.
And just to I mean, that doesn't make a difference in how I view
Sure.
So.
I guess, my question, we've talked about that remote lot quite a bit. And Andy, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but it sounds like the Ford Healthcare's intent is to discontinue use of that remote lot. Would that be happening immediately after this new parking lot is constructed, or do we know what kind of timeline we're looking at on that?
I don't specifically. That area will be receiving, and I don't think it's in the remote lot specifically. I'm trying to think of the map, but we are, if the vacation occurs, well, regardless, I think of whether the vacation occurs, those 4 houses need to be moved. And those are slated to go up into that area on the backside of Florence Street. I don't think that gets in. I'm looking for a nod of agreement. I don't think that gets into the existing parking area. But there has been discussions about that parking area going away and then being available for new housing. So some redevelopment in that area with discussions about single family residential, senior housing and things of that nature.
That was my understanding, but I just wanted to confirm that was still the case. So,
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Just kind of touching along with that, and Rebecca, this is maybe more of a question for you to answer, but I think we would all agree that one of the hardest roles that we play in this position is weighing that balance between resident concerns, resident needs, and then overall best, most beneficial impact for the city as a whole. So for all of our residents. So could you maybe just speak a little bit to what those potential impacts for the city would be if this remote lot land is made available for housing, if these 4 homes are relocated to that, I believe it's technically McMillan property in that TID, what does that look like in terms of impact for the community as a whole?
Sure. I mean, I can speak in general terms here, but the city did establish tax increment district number 10 in the area that we described. So not including the hospital campus, not including the single family homes up there, but including the property on McMillan that had a building on it that was recently, within the last two to 3 years, demolished, including that remote parking lot and including some other of the parcels in that area that are ready for potential redevelopment. It also extends to the west to include the Lorman property as well as the DB Oak site on the west side of the train tracks. It is a blight elimination TID, so it will be around for 27 years. There's a project plan that is on the city's website that has potential projects, potential redevelopment opportunities, potential new roadways and infrastructure that the city may, if development drives or redevelopment drives those projects, the city may engage in developers for private investment that would go into the tax increment district and then eventually, when that district closes, be on the general tax roll. So the other benefit to tax increment financing is that the city, through that TID, not through the general tax dollars, can provide incentives for redevelopment, which would be very important in this area of the city. So I think freeing up that land from a parking lot would, for any potential redevelopment, would only add significant value to the overall tax base, and short-term within the TID, long-term for the city, benefiting the city and all the taxing jurisdictions and taxpayers as a whole.
Thank you. I think the only other thing I just wanted to add, it's not a question, but I just wanted to thank the Ford Healthcare team for their extensive communication. I have thrown a lot of questions their way as well over the last few weeks. And just a thank you to all the residents that did reach out. We don't get to see a ton of resident engagement in this role, and I wish there was more often. But I do, I appreciate it. I think I can speak for most of us when I say that. Specifically, there were some emails from Mr. Steve Benson that led to me asking some questions to our team and to the Ford Healthcare team that I probably wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And that helped me just learn more as a whole about this process and gain some additional clarification. So I just appreciate the communication and the engagement overall about the whole topic. So thank you.
So the tax benefit or negative benefit to the city once this project is completed, assuming that it's passed, is based on the parking lot, the off-premise parking lot, whether that's developed or not, or with or without that issue, does this allow the city, is it a plus for the city, a sidestep for the city, or a negative for the city on the tax basis?
I would say it's a push. There's really there's no impact to the city from the tax standpoint of the street vacation. The potential development of that lot and things like that, if tied to this, and I'm not sure that it necessarily is, but that certainly would be a positive for the city for housing and certainly tax revenue.
Thank you.
I would add that I was asked by Andy to review philosopher City of Middleton, and I have, and I believe that case defines what definition of abutting means, but I think that we meet the qualifications of 66.1003. We fall under sub 4. I've been in discussions with Attorney Rumpf regarding representation of the Ford Healthcare. He has accepted service for them. I do believe, though, that under sub C, there is a sentence which says if a written objection is filed, the discontinuance may be ordered by only a favorable vote of 2/3. So I think we are in a supermajority. So we would need the 4/5, the 2/3, which is a bit different. But I think that I think that's what that sentence plainly means. So we would be in that 4/5.
Thank you for that clarification.
I've thought about this issue a lot, and I echo what Councilmember Harwick said. We had a lot of resident engagement on this issue, more than we usually get, and that was a good thing. And I do empathize with the people that live in that neighborhood. I know that this would represent a pretty major change, and I get the concerns about the change in traffic patterns and potentially effects on property values, which none of us here, I don't think, are qualified to gauge. I take it seriously. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, I grew up in that neighborhood, and actually the residents who live in the house I grew up on filed an objection to this discontinuance. So, but at the same time, I think we need to consider what the alternatives would have been. And, I think back to a handful of years ago, Ford Healthcare bought land west of the bypass and was considering building a new hospital out there. And while that maybe would have been exciting and presented some new opportunities for our community, it would have left a huge hulking property that would have been extremely challenging to redevelop. And I don't know realistically what that would have looked like. So I think given that the hospital's been so successful there for a number of decades, I do think staying in place is the best thing for the community. And long-term, knowing just in the near-term future what population metrics look like in the area. We do have an aging population. Having Fort Healthcare here providing services is only a huge benefit to our community. So I also want to point out again, because I fear this might get lost in some discussions if we do move forward with this. This is a property owner seeking to redevelop their own property. This isn't houses being seized by the city or anything like that. This is a property owner seeking to redevelop their own property, and it is in concert with the comprehensive plan. So I just think those are important points for people to remember.
I, like Bruce and probably many of you, have put on plenty of miles driving North 4th Street and McMillan and that whole general area in the last month. Even today, as I was doing laps around the hospital to try and get a little clearer picture again, it was interesting to me. I believe there's a shuttle running from the employee parking lot. I got to witness employees getting into and out of a shuttle in order to get to work. I noticed the vacant lot of a building that has been raised. I looked at traffic flows. I tried to take into account everything that we had heard from our constituents. And at the end of the day, I strongly felt that if this situation of having a parking lot and a vacant lot was occurring anywhere else within our community, in a perhaps a more public part of our community versus being tucked up against a farm field, we would have heard about this a lot sooner. And I'm sorry that we didn't identify this area as something that needed attention earlier. And I'm glad that we have our comprehensive plan to fall back on and say, this is identified. This is something that can be developed and can be beneficial for the overall residents of our community. So I think that regardless how the vote goes, Fort Healthcare put forward a very viable plan that does fall in concert with what we are hoping to achieve as a city.
64 years ago, I was born in the very oldest part of that hospital. I've grown here my whole life. I watched many additions go on to that hospital as it got bigger, better, and serve our city's needs better and better all the time. I don't want to see that stop. I think that I don't want to put a roadblock in front of them that says, okay, you're done getting bigger. You're done getting better. We're not going to help you at all. I feel bad that my decision probably will make a few people unhappy with me. That hurts me inside in a place I can't describe, but I think what's good for my city is what I'm thinking.
If there's no other discussion, we would seek a motion.
I would move to approve the resolution discontinuing a portion of North 4th Street between Armenia Street and McMillan Street in the city of Fort Atkinson, Jefferson County, Wisconsin.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? This will be a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick,
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz,
No.
President Scheer.
Aye. That
Ayes have
motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 7B, which is the review and possible action relating to a one lot certified survey map for the property located at 1310 and 1320 Campus Drive.
Yeah, Manager Lemire, if you could pull up that PowerPoint. We have 3 items. If you skip ahead there, B, C, and D, they're all sort of related to each other. So I'd like to explain this project to the council, and then those 3 items can be acted on individually. The project that we're looking at here is part of a planned unit development. The first thing that I want to mention is that this area is not within our planned neighborhood here by Vandal. And so if you look at the lower left-hand corner where you see the big blue stormwater basin and the big brown multifamily area, this lot that I'm about to show you in the next slide is down below. So orient yourself. You can see the faded parking lot of the high school there. Orient yourself to that, and then in the next slide you'll kind of understand what we're looking at here. So the PUD process is a process that's within our zoning code. We've used it, I think this is the 3rd time now, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a very valuable process. It allows city staff and planning commission and city council some flexibility within the zoning code when a project has the merits to deserve such. There are 2 steps within the PUD process. PUD stands for Planned Unit Development. There is the GDP, which is before us this evening. That's the General Development Plan. In that GDP, we define what the flexibilities are within the zoning code that we're going to allow the project to have. In exchange, we also indicate the project will be moving forward under the second phase, which is the SIP, the Specific Implementation Plan. The SIP does not come before City Council. That is basically a site plan review by the Planning Commission. And that's where we look in detail at the aesthetics of the project, the stormwater, the lighting, all of those things that are more Planning Commission related. In order to zone this as a PUD, so we put a new zoning over the top of this parcel, we have to define the parcel. And that is what the CSM is that's before us this evening. So the parcel that you see there outlined in yellow is the whole parcel. That is actually composed of one smaller parcel and one larger parcel. So next slide, please. The CSM that's before us this evening is just simply combining, cleaning up those internal parcel lines so that we have a single parcel. That parcel will then have the zoning changed to it from what is currently an R2 zoning. We will bestow the PUD zoning onto that parcel through the general development plan. And when we do that, we define a base underlying zoning that's sort of our guide. In this situation, it's the MRH 30 zoning. That stands for multifamily residential. I think it's heavy, if I'm not mistaken, and that refers to the density, not the weight of the zoning. Sorry, I took a lot of pothole shots earlier. So anyway, the MRH 30 zoning is basically what we're trying to ascribe to, and then the flexibilities that I'll talk about within that are what we're going to put into kind of set in stone this evening through the GDP. Next slide, please. The project is two phases. The phase, if you Campus Drive is to the left in this photo, and then the high school access road is at the top. The phase one is to the left. It's along Campus Drive there. Phase two has not been approved in the SIP, only phase one. Phase two will come back if and when they decide to build it. But what you're looking at is a layout of two 36-unit buildings. There is an underground parking garage associated with that, and that is flexibility number one. So our zoning code indicates that a garage must be offset 2 feet from the plane of the building. Obviously, when the garage is underneath the building, that doesn't quite work. So we will allow that flexibility to occur on this project. So that is flexibility number one that we'll define. Next slide, please. The second flexibility is outlined in blue there, and that is the distance that the pavement must be offset from a road. Now, you'll note that this is not a road. The high school driveway is a private drive owned by the high school, but we do anticipate in the future that this could become a public road. So we want to deal with this now and allow the flexibility for that minimum pavement setback that should be 10 feet. To be at 7 feet through this area, should it become a public road. I'll, as a side, note that we are in discussions with the school district about that and have some meetings coming up, I think, that will better define the future of that area for us, and that will come back before council. So that is flexibility number two. We're going to allow that asphalt to get a little closer than the 10 feet that's dictated. Next slide, please. The third flexibility deals with height. So the maximum building height within the MRH 30 zoning district is 45 feet. We have a 4-story structure that is planned. What you're seeing is a photograph of a 3-story structure built by the same developer in McFarland. That planned 4-story structure here in Fort Atkinson will be 52 feet. Thanks for the nod, Jed. And so we are going to allow that third flexibility from the maximum building height restriction within this GDP this evening. Next slide, please. This is just another kind of end view of the building. Planning Commission looked at this in more detail in the SIP, but I wanted to make sure that council had an idea of some of the aesthetics of the proposed development. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have on the process, any elements of the flexibilities that I noted, or just any general questions about the project itself. And then I can walk through the with items B, C, and D.
Oh, do you feel that 3 feet is make or break on that roadway? Because we're at 7 feet planned right now, and you said 10 feet was.
Right, 10 feet was where the problem, when we talked about trying to move it back from the road, is the stormwater basin is behind, and I should have put up a better shot of that. But as the building comes back from that potential road, it gets closer and closer to the edge of that flood elevation in that pond. So technically speaking, this is not in violation of our ordinance because it's not a public road. However, we want to kind of hedge our bets for the future and just make sure we accomplish this.
I will also note that it wouldn't be 7 feet from the pavement on the development to pavement on the roadway. Because it's 7
Yeah.
feet from the right of way, which means there will be sidewalk and a
Correct.
terrace in between the drive and the actual pavement of the roadway, curb and gutter. And
That's
pavement.
helpful. That was my concern. Like
Yeah,
6
that's-
feet is not a lot of space between a building and where kids are driving in.
It's
to
kind of
go
like the
to high
Robert
school.
Street Bridge, right? Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's important. And there is planned sidewalk along Campus Drive with phase 1. Again, that's an SIP thing, but certainly something we want to let you know about.
Did I understand you correctly that 3 of the buildings are a go and the 4th building is a probable?
The 2 buildings that he has here, the first building, phase 1, is a go. His intention, what he's discussed with city staff, is to have that building renting by June of 24. And if the first building goes well, they would start the second building in the fall of 24. And so that's his current schedule. But I don't have a lot of experience with these things, but my expectation is that schedule can shift very quickly with changes in interest rates and things like that. So we've approved phase 1 at Planning Commission, and we've told them they'll have to come back for the second building and show us the plan for that.
And that building does include some low income housing, yes?
This particular development does not. Now, the development that will come before us here in the near future that is on city property, those are the 3 buildings with 144 units. That does have a component of affordable housing to it. I want to say 20 units or something like that of the 140. But that'll be coming back to us here in the future.
That information is available through your office?
Yes, Manager Lemire and myself, I think we have a pretty good understanding of how that's going to shape up, even at this early juncture. So
I asked for a citizen that I know has limited income
Mhm.
and is losing their place of residence and looking for something that's affordable. And I thought she'd need to know where
yeah,
or how to get the information to at least get her name on the list.
yeah, I think the timeline for those to begin renting was it 25?
Yeah, I think
Something
those
like that
will
range.
likely start construction in 24 and be done by mid 25.
So maybe a little far out for an immediate need, but certainly getting at, what you've heard from your constituents and what the city housing studies have shown is that we lack affordable housing. So it's a good win.
Thanks.
I will also just mention that this project is in our tax increment district number 9. There will, development agreement will come forward before the city council. These approvals are all contingent on the development agreement and vice versa. So these things all kind of are intertwined.
Andy, can you just confirm under the recommendation in the memo, it notes that city staff would, if there is little public feedback, that city staff would recommend waiving the 3rd reading and only doing 2 readings of this? Is that just because of timing with the developer, or is there another reason related to that?
I think it's the timing with the developer. The financing seems to be something that he would like to set quickly. And I assume it's because of the kind of the changing interest rate environment that we're in. So, and certainly if there is public feedback, we would absolutely entertain a 3rd reading if needed. We've just had situations before where there's not a lot of feedback and a 2 readings seems to work well.
Thank you.
I know that we're not really, I don't want to get into a deep dive on it, but I remember at one of the plan commission meetings, they had talked about the projected rents. Do you have that information, Andy, or recall?
I do not off the top of my head. I do know that these are market rate rents. So for what that's worth,
That's about all I know.
I guess I just want to make the point, from what I recall seeing, and then today I reached out to Manager Lemire because I knew we had some data somewhere, and she sent me a summary. We actually did have a housing study done just in September of 22, so very recently. I think people need to realize what's being charged for rents in Fort Atkinson right now. Landlords are getting over $1,000 a month for single bedroom apartments. And then if you go up to 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, it's much higher. So these markets are in line with what the market is already dictating. And if we want to see rents get somewhat cheaper over time, the only way to do that is increasing the supply of rentals in Fort Atkinson, which we really haven't done for about 20 years. So I'm very happy this is moving forward, and I hope that people will realize this is part of a bigger picture, that we're trying to add all kinds of housing. It's not just market rate rentals. It's not just rentals, period. We're working on adding all kinds of housing in this project along Baker Road, which I realize this is not part of that, but it's
Yeah.
tied to it.
It is all together.
I move to approve the certified survey map for the property located at 1310 and 1320 Campus Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, which takes us to 7C, which is the review and possible action relating to a planned unit development, general development plan for the Tip of the Spear LLC multifamily residential development proposed at 1310 and 1320 Campus Drive.
This is where those 3 flexibilities come into play.
I know you kind of already touched on one, but no, no concern from your end or other city staff end on the other 2?
No.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the planned unit development, general development plan for the Tip of the Spear LLC multifamily residential development proposed at 1310 and 1320 Campus Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And then 7D is the first reading of a proposed ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin for the property located at 1310 and 1320 Campus Drive from RS2 Single Family Residential to PUD Planned Unit Development District.
Move to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a second reading at the city council meeting on April 6th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a litany of seconds. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, reports of officers, boards and committees. 8A is the city manager's report.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Brandon Roggenby and Nick Rodenius from our Public Works Operations Division on the recent promotion from Public Works crew persons to equipment operators. Was also very pleased to attend a promotional ceremony for Kevin Miller on Monday. He was promoted from police officer to police lieutenant. He was here tonight as well. I'm always thrilled to promote from within our organization and provide additional opportunities for our employees. I also want to commend our management team for investing and mentoring our current team members so they can continue to move up within this organization. I attended the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Luncheon on March 15th. Deb Reinbold from Thrive ED and JCEDC and Jim Villa from the CEO of NAIOP, which is the Wisconsin chapter of the Commercial Real Estate Development Association, spoke about local unemployment, attainable housing, childcare, and how the new state budget may impact local efforts at community growth and economic development. No surprises here, but unemployment is very low, and affordable and attainable housing in Jefferson County are few and far between. Along with President Scheer, I attended a Conversations with Thrive ED event on March 16th in Jefferson. The event provided an opportunity for members of JCEDC, the Jefferson County Economic Development Consortium, to engage with the Thrive ED investors and promote our communities to potential developers. On Monday, I met with representatives from other Jefferson County municipalities, as well as representatives from Thrive ED and the Greater Watertown Community Health Foundation. Jefferson County and the Greater Watertown Community Health Foundation are putting together a revolving loan fund to support multifamily housing development within the Greater Jefferson County region. We, as a group, reviewed eligibility requirements as well as some of the criteria against which the applications will be judged. The timeline for implementation of the revolving loan fund is not clear. It should be 2023, but the goal is to raise investments of $10 million to support housing. So there will be financial assistance through loans at the county level as well. We are very close to completion of the CDBG Lorman project. The DNR is reviewing the interim action report, and the Department of Administration is very close to providing that final grant to the city for the project. Once it's complete, the property will sit vacant for those 5 years and then can be redeveloped. And it's also located within our tax increment district number 10. So we're confident that we can market the property for appropriate infill development in the future. Engineer Selly submitted a grant application for the paving, narrowing, and sidewalk installation on Blackhawk Drive. We should hear back from the DOT in June regarding that project. The traffic impact analysis approved by the City Council for the Banker Road and Campus Drive area has started. Cameras have been placed in the area to collect data, so wave if you see any of those. The construction specifications and bid documents have been released for the water main replacement and roadwork project for the summer. That is on Wilcox, Florence, and Rogers Streets. The better the bids are that are returned, the more work that can be completed. So we're hopeful that we'll get some good rates there. Also, our Department of Public Works operations staff is trying out a couple of different work schedules over the next few months in order to improve efficiency and volume of work, as well as allow those folks additional time away from work. So toward the end of the summer, staff will evaluate the impacts and determine a more permanent work schedule. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Very busy report.
Yes.
Agenda item number 9 this evening, unfinished business. We have none. 10 is new business. 10A is the review and possible action relating to 2022 year-end financial information.
Okay. So I just have a few slides to run through for you here. So the goals of this year-end financial report here are to create efficiencies, avoid duplications in reporting, maintain transparency and accountability for all these public funds, and tie the year-end report back to the adopted budget document. So we have listed some of our 2022 accomplishments here, listed in the 2023 budget as 2022 year-end accomplishments and as goals for the 2022 budget. So we did qualify for the expenditure restraint program for the 2023 budget. The state limits the general fund and levied expenditures to a percentage over the previous budget. So we did qualify for 2023. We completed that general obligation borrowing of $2.25 million for projects in 2022 and 2023. We completed water main and construction work, including use of CDBG grant funds and funds from our 2021 rate case dedicated to the replacement of water main. We completed the Robert Street Bridge deck replacement. That was a DOT project, but that took up a lot of engineer Selly's time. We successfully communicated with the public. I think that was a very successful project, and we ended up with a really great deck replacement with additional safety features. We also implemented our Capital Catalyst revolving loan fund and provided 2 loans to Pete's Tire and Papa Brunk's Bakery. We are expecting 2 additional applications in 2023, at least 2 additional applications. We were successful in a public safety referendum and implementing a new service. So we hired staff and we have a new operational plan, and our fire department has now been successfully providing 911 EMS service since December 26th. We created 2 new tax increment districts. I think we've referenced both of those tonight on multiple occasions. So that was really, it's an economic development tool for staff to encourage development and redevelopment. And I think we've been using it successfully, and we will continue to do so with the creation of these 2 new districts. We also administered 4 successful elections, thanks to Michelle and her team, and prepared and implemented a city council orientation. We also executed 3-year agreements with surrounding towns for EMS service, executed a master development agreement with the Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize to develop the city's 75 acres of land along Banker Road, which you saw in our pretty graphic earlier tonight, and continued to increase our communication with the public as well as maintaining all of our existing staffing and services. So I would say that 2022 was a successful year. So I'll go through a couple of these items. These are all outlined in the memo that was included in the council packet. So I won't belabor any of these things, but I will just let you know that the 2022 total taxes levied was about $28 million over all of the taxing jurisdictions. You can see in that pie chart how those taxes are distributed amongst the different taxing jurisdictions, including the the existing tax increment districts, which are 6, 7, and 8. We have collected a total of 20,700,000 at this point, which is about 73%. Second installments of taxes are due to the county by the end of July of this year. The next thing we look at is the general fund revenue accounts, 15% over or under budget. And these are accounts with a minimum of $5,000 budgeted. So the good news is we had 0 accounts, 15% or more over budget, which would be on the revenue side, unrealized revenue. We had 8 accounts that were 15% or more above over budget, which is surplus revenue. And the total estimated revenue above what we budgeted was about $273,000. So this is great. It means we are realizing the revenue that we anticipated and actually realizing more than we budgeted. And so there is a table in the memo and here that shows the accounts with that surplus revenue. They are mainly attributable to the building and electrical permits, court fines and penalties, interest on investments. We did not budget much for interest, and you can see we really outpaced what we budgeted there. And then the sale of property were the major ones. We also looked at general fund expenditure accounts, 15% over or under budget, again, in accounts with a minimum of $5,000. There were 27 accounts, 15% or more over budget, overspent, 34 accounts, 15% or more under budget, unspent or underspent, with the total net expenditures under budget of $23,351. So highlights of that, that table is in your memo. It's a couple pages long, so I didn't include it here. But highlights of that include utility rates across the board. Gas was really we didn't budget properly for gas in 2022, and or rates increased. And so that was overall facilities, the utility rates. We were over budget on a few of those. We had a lot of overtime in our police department dispatch center due to staffing, medical leave, and turnover. We also had some in our police department relating to uniforms, squads, fuel, those types of matters. And then our building inspector, we had a vacancy for a little bit of time and used a contracted building inspector, which put us over budget in that account. So accounts that were under budget, health and dental insurance due to staffing changes, allocations to utilities, other funds, and then salaries and wages for unfilled positions. So net expenditures, under budget of $23,000. And when we add that together with our net revenues of $273,000, we're looking at about a total of $296,000 estimated net increase in our general fund balance. However, I will note that the audit, we don't have the audited numbers yet, so those might change. So it was a good year for our general fund balance. The next thing we look at is the estimated fund balance for all of our funds. You can see this is also in the memo that was in the council packet. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I will just, there is an explanation, notes on the side here for anything that is over or under And I will just note that we had positive fund balances in all of these funds, which is actually more than 2021. So that's a good thing. We had positive balances in, obviously in our general fund, which we just went through, our utilities, debt service, transportation fund, TID 7 and 8, our library, capital improvements, our capital catalyst revolving loan fund, the CDBG funds, the airport fund, ARPA, all those were positive. We did have a couple negative balances. First was the EMS fund, and that is due to there will be offsets by that for Atkinson Community Foundation grant. But it is important to note that in the EMS fund, as we move forward, revenue is lagging. I mean, we can bill patients, and we don't actually do the billing. We do use a third party, but we bill patients, and it can be months before we see revenue from that. So there will be revenue will be lagging in that for a while here. TID number 6, as we all know, is a distressed TID, but there is a plan to pay that back through increment, and 7 and 8 are donor TIDs, donate increment to TID 6 to get it out of the hole. And when TID 6 is out of the hole, TID 6, 7, and 8 will close, bringing approximately, gosh, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but $30 million or so back onto the general tax roll. You can see, I'll just go back real quick to, this is $1.7 million that is of property taxes that are going to the 3 TIDs right now. And so when those 3 TIDs are closed, that amount will be distributed percentage proportionally through the percentages that you see up here back to each of the taxing jurisdictions. So you can see that it has a pretty significant economic impact to close those TIDs when we are ready. The taxi fund, there's a negative balance there, but that is due to the timing of state and federal grant payments. And then TIDs number 9 and 10, as we've mentioned tonight, are new. We had creation costs in 2022, but no revenue. So those that is perfectly normal. We won't start to see revenue until at least 2024 in those TIDs. So none of these funds present any major concerns. Finally, tonight we have our carryover requests, and these are accounts that have designated projects or activities with donations or programming fees that are specific to the project that we ask to carry over to the next year. So our total requested to be carried over to 2023, there are 17 accounts, and the total is $308,152.06. And I will note that most of the report here is just for your information, but there is an action item that's requested by staff in the staff report, which I'm not looking at in front of me right now, but I believe is just to approve the carryover funds. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has about the report.
I just think it was really neat to look at the list of carryover funds because the vast majority of them are different donations that have come to the city, either through community groups or individuals that want to support, specific facilities or specific parks or specific programs, which I think is just a neat thing to see. Rebecca, the only question I did have, and let me go back up to that page, is there's a section where you talk about that right now, the general fund expenditures represent or that the balance is about 38%, but above that, it notes that the city's goal is to be between 15 and 30%. Is that 38 just because of some of this unexpected revenue that came in this year? And are you anticipating that not being that high, that we would be closer to the 15 to 30%? I'm looking under that section 4.
Right.
The net. Okay.
Yeah. And so there's 2 different ways that we can look at that percentage. And I did calculate them both in this memo to show those. So one is just using the general fund expenditures of about $9.8 million. And that gives us that 38%.
Okay.
Okay, but if we decide to use the expenditures, including all the levied funds for our general fund expenditures, that's what the state bases the expenditure restraint program on, is that larger number, that $12.4 million in expenditures. Then if we use that number, we're looking at about 30%.
you are in that.
So we
Okay.
are in that
Okay.
range. But I will say that in 2022, the council approved the staff to start to invest some of these cash funds a little bit. And we will see the impact of that over the next 24 months as it was a ladder investment, mainly CDs and treasuries, but they will bear fruit over the next 24 months. And we will see additional funds there. So, and once we get to a point where everybody feels comfortable, I think the city of Fort Atkinson over the last probably 5 to 15 years has not been in such a positive financial situation. So this is relatively new. So we will, there may be projects or things in the future that consist of maybe one-time funding that fund balance would be an appropriate use for. But other than that, it is a savings account and one that we would be wise to use very judiciously.
Thank you.
I'd like to think I had a bigger view of the whole thing. I don't, but I'm impressed with what you said. Sounded like the bulk of the way across the board, we're looking pretty good financially with more optimistic views for the future, which I assume is part of your handiwork, and well done.
Thank you.
Rebecca, I apologize if you mentioned this. When you were given the rundown of the TIFs, our one, you called it mildly distressed TIF district.
Mildly irritated, agitated. There you go.
When are we expecting that to get closed out?
Probably between 2025 and 2027.
Coming up sooner than later.
Yep.
So that's good.
And as we, if there are more projects in TID 6, so the city closed on a parcel on Friday of last week. So that is income. So that's revenue that will help to pay that down. So any new project that creates increment will assist in paying that debt down. New projects, a new increment in TID 8 will generate increment that can be donated to TID 6 to help pay that down. So as the whole city sees additional development, specifically within the TIDs, we will be able to close those out hopefully as early as possible. There are also options which we can talk about in the future of holding those 3 TIDs open for 1 year to collect the increment in order to do affordable housing program, which I think that there's lots of examples statewide of communities that have done that and been very successful. So I would hope that when we get to the point, we can move forward with some sort of affordable housing project using that TID money.
I know there can be a lot more flexibility in that than some people would expect. So that might be something to really look at.
Yep.
It's great.
And for those that aren't familiar with all of our TID numberings, TID number 6 is what's commonly referred to as the Clement Business Park. So that is exciting to hear that is moving in the right direction.
I definitely applaud. I know there was some staff that had left. You've been able to keep positions filled some vacancies, kept some key components of our city running as we have some of our city staff here with us. And also the amount of grants that have been applied for and that we got to help do the things within the city, I think is a testament to the work of you and the city staff. So thank you.
I have a great team.
I move to approve the 2022 funds requested to be carried over to 2023 as listed in Table 5 for a total of $308,152.06.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Takes us to 10B, which is the review and possible action relating to the purchase of a set of 3 doors and 2 exit bars for the municipal building.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. City staff worked with Plunkett Racich Architects, known as PRA, in 2022 to perform a facility assessment on the municipal building. The facility assessment identified recommendations for the maintenance and improvements necessary to continue operations. The assessment prioritized items to repair and or replace at the municipal building. So in the facility assessment, PRA recommended a removal and replacement of the deteriorated hollow metal doors and door frames in the northwest corner of the gymnasium. The doors are over 25 years old, and over time the rust has eaten away at the door frames, causing gaps between the doors and the frames. Heated and or cooled air slips through the gaps, causing the building to be less efficient. Also in the facility assessment, PRA recommended that the exit bars on the Main Street and Water Street entrances be replaced. The two entrances and exits requested are the main access points for all traffic at City Hall and are heavily used. The current exit bars are at the end of their useful life and often stick, which may cause security concerns. So we had received an initial proposal to budget appropriately for this work last fall and budgeted $13,200 in the CIP. Due to those price increases these days of steel doors, hardware, and cost of labor rising significantly, the prices increased in the last 6 months. So there's a table in the memo that shows the two proposals we received, one from Baker Glass and one from Fort Atkinson Glass and Mirror. So we are proposing to go with Baker Glass proposal with as it's less expensive at $14,100. If approved, $13,200 will be covered through the municipal building CIP, and then the remaining balance of $900 will be covered through a municipal building repairs budget. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I was just surprised, honestly, that the increase was as minimal as it was, given some other things that we have seen. Obviously, it's never good to have anything come in more than we planned, but I think this is probably less than we certainly know it could have been. And obviously great to see, and thank you to you, Brooke, for both those quotes being from local companies too. It's certainly nice to see that included.
No, I'm just glad this, we're starting to move forward with some of these small projects within the municipal building. It's important to remember this building's pushing 100 years old. So obviously there's been some wear and tear on it over the years, and I'm glad we're doing what we can to keep it up. So this is a good thing.
I move to approve the proposal from Baker Glass for the purchase and installation of 3 doors and 2 exit bars for the municipal building for a total of $14,100.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 10C is the review and possible action relating to the purchase of a 2023 Ford F-150 truck and Tommy liftgate for the Parks and Recreation Department at a cost not to exceed $41,518.
Yes, thank you. So in 2022, 31-year-old F-150 was the first replacement of our vehicle replacement plan in the CIP. Currently, our parks vehicle fleet consists of 3 trucks that are in good shape, but there are safety concerns with 4 trucks as outlined in the vehicle fleet attachments. The safety concerns with those 4 trucks are serious and include many truck parts rotting out, such as rocker panels, cab corners, wheel wells, and underneath the cab. And we are working towards a goal of a 15-year vehicle replacement plan, and the age of the replacement shown is currently 16 to 27 years old. The older the vehicle, the more money that goes into the vehicle regarding maintenance and repairs. So we're requesting to replace the 2002 F-150. In 2022, a F-350 flatbed was approved for the purchase with the 2022 borrowing in 2023. However, due to dealerships unable to get flatbeds for several years, staff is requesting to purchase F-150 truck instead. So we have pushed the F-350 flatbed to 2026 in our CIP. We have 5 full-time park staff and 4 seasonal parks maintenance staff, and also 4 seasonal cityscape staff who need transportation to perform work duties. Staff often ride together to accommodate the number of vehicles. The requested F-150 will be a reliable and valuable addition to the fleet and will help staff serve the community more efficiently. So Griffin Ford and Fort Atkinson was the only quote received. Much like the water department's recent truck purchase, state procurement vendor was unable to provide options, and the other local dealer was contacted with no response. So we were fortunate enough to find this vehicle. It was $43,385 for the list price, and they did honor our usual government discount and offering a purchase price of $38,736. Griffin Ford also proposed a guaranteed trade-in value of $1,200 for the 2002 F-150, with the option for the city to attempt to sell it outright for more through the Wisconsin surplus auction site. So the net expense would be guaranteed at $70,000 or $37,536. In addition to that truck, staff proposes to purchase a Tommy Gate liftgate at a cost of $3,982 from Northland Equipment. The Tommy Gate is an accessory that is on all trucks for safety. One thing I wanted to note about the Tommy Gate is our insurance offers safety grant and program reimbursement on various items. And one of those items is the Tommy Gate G2 series. So I will apply for that grant to receive grant funds of up to $2,000. So the department budgeted $50,000 through the 2022 borrowing for that F-350 flatbed replacement. So again, due to that inability to find a flatbed, staff is requesting to purchase the 2023 F-150 with the 2022 borrowed funds. So the total cost is $7,282 less than those two borrowed funds. So many different years and amounts here. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Brooke, we don't get a lot of these bigger truck purchases from your department, but this seems to be in line with a trend where we're just not getting multiple quotes back. I don't know, maybe that's more of a question for staff in general. I mean, is that just the market in general right now because these vehicles are so hard to come by, or?
Yeah, so where we were struggling, we've been searching months and months for an F-150. The struggle is that Ford isn't taking any additional orders. So in the past, we have always kind of built the truck and then, we ordered that new truck, where now we're kind of stuck to what our local dealership is able to find on a different lot somewhere. So they're basically searching for a vehicle for us. So I think other local dealership who we usually get additional quote from isn't quoting another one because they can't build and order a new vehicle. So they, in a sense, would be competing with the Griffin Ford and out of Fort to purchase this vehicle that they found on a different lot somewhere else. And they're all pretty respective of those communities that they serve.
That makes sense. No, I appreciate it. It's tough times, but I mean, it does seem like you found a reasonable solution given the parameters you had to work with. So that's good. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the purchase of a 2023 Ford F-150 truck and Tommy liftgate for the Parks and Rec Department at a cost not to exceed $41,518.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10D is the review and possible action relating to alcohol beverage license application for Amir Investment Inc. for the licensing period of March 22nd, 2023 to June 30th, 2023.
Thank you. As noted, this is a Class A license, which allows for consumption away from the premise. This location is 303 South Main Street. It may be more familiar the last few years. It was Loader BP. It's on the corner of Main Street and Third Street. This was purchased from Loader BP in June of 2022 by iWise Adventures and operated as iMart. Mr. Muafa Rizek purchased that property, and recently I was informed that him and his brother are doing some trading of leases with some of the properties. And Mr. Munadel Rizek, Mira Investment, is taking over 16 of the locations. He's just going to be leasing and running the business. However, iWise Venture is going to maintain ownership of the property. So as we were not, I believe we were at max for Class A, pardon me for not having that at the tip of my tongue, but I did request that they submit our letter saying that they would surrender the license contingent upon approval of the new applicant. Sometimes that's just a nice paper trail for our records to have within our licensing system also. Background check is being performed. I did not hear back on that. Part of the delay is that the owner is from Illinois. So you have to reach out to all the other jurisdictions where they have residents, and sometimes it takes a while to hear back from that. The agent, the agent, which is also the manager that's on site, they do scheduling, the hiring, the ordering of the product, the stocking of the shelves, basically. That is a local resident, and that agent is remaining the same. There's no change in that. They are also applying for a cigarette license. Monies owed would just be the prorated license fees. Now, as our licenses are annual, they would all come due this end of the year. So that's why you can see that it's only for a few months period. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, we would recommend the motion be contingent upon successful background check and then payment on any monies owed.
I'll move to approve the alcohol beverage license application for Amir Investment Inc. for the licensing period of March 22nd, 2023 to June 30th, 2023, subject to the conditions included in the staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 11, miscellaneous. This evening we have none. 12 is claims appropriations and contract payments. 12A is the review and possible action relating to the verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorization of payment.
I move to approve the list of verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorize payment.
Second.
A motion and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick. Aye. Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Shear.
Aye. Agenda item 13, adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.